Joining me now is Jay Wilgar, CEO of Newstrike Brands. Jay, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me back.
Jay, what's 2019 looking like for Newstrike Brands?
Well, I think 2018 behind us was a very exciting year.
The end of the year sure could have used a different ending.
Well, it could have, yeah. I mean, that wasn't the most exciting part, but 2019 is going to be really big for us. You know, we look at going into the fact that we are one of 7 licensed producers in at least 7 provinces here in Canada, and that's huge for us. We've got
you sell in the cannabis store in Ontario, right?
We do.
Yeah,
that's right.
We just bought some of your cannabis. We're going to.
What did you buy? What did you get?
I can't remember. I was the one who bought it, but I bought it like 2 weeks ago. It just got here.
Fantastic.
And we're actually putting a panel together to sample all of the licensed producers' product, and we're actually going to do a giant bong hit each. And then we're going to interview each other about the quality of the marijuana.
Oh, that's a great idea. Well, I will hope that you like our product. I'm sure you do. It's been getting great reviews.
Good.
Certainly our Meridian is the most popular of the dry bud products that we have.
Cool.
But no, we brought some great new staff on. We had an announcement on Monday, some really big hitters from the branding marketing world. Sylvie's joining us in a couple of weeks. Her background is Johnson & Johnson. We just brought on Mark Burton, head of strategy. He's been a CEO of several things himself, legal background, and a new specialist just in oil production. And our Niagara site, I've got to get you out there. I mean, it is something to see. It's
really? It's ready to go.
Well, it's in production. It's been in production in I guess 3 months now, and then the second phase of it is going to be finished in about 2 more months.
So you've got a crop coming to maturity right now?
We've got crops that are actually through maturity.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll come down there. We're looking for something to shoot this week.
Well, if you want to come down, you let me know. And it really is something to see. I mean, it's the Dutch trace system, and
cool.
It's a pretty big site. It's 500,000 square feet.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, of course, also with our partnership with the Neal brothers, the idea is that we're really diving now into the edible side of things and kind of some of the exciting stuff we're going to do with
when can we actually buy edibles at the Ontario Cannabis Store, do you think?
Again, you know, it's so dependent. We're certainly going to be ready for the fall, if not in advance of that. So we've been really focused on being ready for the edibles market and certainly the vape pen market. We are very active in those 2 markets right now and making sure that whatever the timeline ends up being, that we're going to be ready for it.
Very cool.
So we're expecting October, I think, next fall is really the timeline.
I'm curious, maybe you can answer one thing for me. So there's all this mainstream media coverage out there suggesting that the shortage of legal cannabis in Canada could persist for years. And I'm having a hard time reconciling that with the growing capacity currently and in 12 months, by which time it goes up actually by like 30% more growing capacity. So if we've got all this capacity and yet the stores are selling out and you can only buy 30 grams at a time.
Sure.
And I'm just curious, why is this discrepancy? It doesn't make sense. You look at the production capacity of all the LPs, we should have no problem.
So it's an interesting point, because this has been something we've been discussing from day one, and for me it's been a bit of a frustration, because you know, when we as a company have been announcing capacity, we announce what we're actually going to be producing, and you know, we've been very open with our shareholders that Niagara will bring on 17,000 kilograms of capacity that we can produce this year. But the second phase of it, which is being built right now, will bring on another 23,000 by next year. And of course, all of these announcements that we collectively as LPs are making are always subject to, you know, Health Canada, to approvals. And that process, I think everyone forgets, that it's not as easy as, hey, guess what, we just opened a greenhouse over here and it's 1 million square feet. You know, we're gonna bring all this production on. There really is a process to it, and that's why I'd love you to come down and see it, because the one thing too is you know, think about a greenhouse like ours that was actually there before and was producing plants. We bought that. We're in the process of converting it. You're now training staff that need to be brought up to speed on some pretty serious standard operating procedures, and that's critically important. Training people to trim, training people to grow, getting your packaging line set up. So I'm not surprised by hearing that shortfall may persist much longer than I think people think, because I don't think that most LPs are going to be online with as much capacity as maybe they've indicated as quickly as they will be. Again,
so
I
look
look
saying
at
those forward-looking statements aren't actually going to turn out to be true?
I will not comment on anyone else. I can tell you where I know we're going to be,
right.
But I will tell you when people, there have been a lot of very big announcements about enormous production facilities,
yeah.
And I can tell you as the person who is reporting to my shareholders on how quickly I can bring something online. It takes time. It just does. It's hiring the right. I mean, and Niagara is a great example. It's a very good sized facility, and we're almost at 200 staff within the company now, and we're going to need another 100 by the summer. What you just don't pull these people out of thin air and
right.
teach them how to do it.
Right.
And I think the other thing too is learning how to grow in huge quantities indoors like we are all doing. Again, is tricky. There are things to it that tricks that you need to learn, and as far as certainly keeping quality consistent and all these things. So I think that's another piece. So look, I'm certainly not saying that the forward-looking statements of other companies are incorrect, but right. I am saying I think that the idea that a shortage may persist for quite some time, I stick with that. And I also think that, as I've said actually on the show before, the whole thing is this process, right?
Sure.
Because when I look at our business model, dry bud and selling dry bud is certainly a big part of it, but when I look at the oil side of things and vape pens, we see huge numbers of new customers coming into that market. And quite frankly, a lot of people that probably weren't using that much cannabis before, and I think that's going to create a really interesting upside for what's happening in the industry.
Sure, you bet. Yeah. So then tell me about how are your financials shaping up for 2019? You're obviously going to be able to supply more cannabis as the year goes on.
We are, yeah.
Are you in a state yet where you're projecting profitability?
We are. Right now we're looking at fourth quarter next year realistically. We've ramped up our production, like I said, in Niagara is going to get us to that 17,000 kilogram mark by next year. I think from a balance sheet point of view, Newstrike's in a very strong spot. I mean, we're sitting on about $100 million in cash right now. We have no debt. We own both of our facilities outright. Yep. So once we do a few things that I'm working on, as well as finishing off what's happening in Niagara, we're still going to be sitting on a really, really strong balance sheet, and then we look at some really good revenues for the year. So sure. I think 2019 is going to be really exciting, quite frankly, in the from the point of view of products. And the point of view of seeing how companies actually start generating the revenues that we've been talking about, and we certainly think we're going to be there.
Do you have any ambition towards a global sort of play in any other jurisdictions? So
we do, and I've always stuck to the messaging, and I think it's important that nobody is killing it in Canada yet. Nobody. And I would say that across the board. And so what we continue to look at is the fact that we are one of very few people that or very few companies that have a really national coverage when it comes to provinces. So I want to make sure that we're executing correctly in each one of these provinces before I get too excited about going off and doing things internationally. We've got a lot of opportunity. We continue to look internationally. But the funny stat is if you look at third quarter last year, LPs combined in Canada only exported around 800 kilograms of product. So if you compare, the size of the actual market right now in Canada, which is again not yet even serviced, and look at opportunities internationally, our view is really let's make sure that we are good at what we're doing right here first before we run off and try and do things everywhere else. With certainly with an eye to those other places. Yep. I see opportunities certainly in Europe and UK. South America, I think, is interesting, but again, from a regulatory point of view, we've got, in my view, the strongest regulations right here at this moment, and I think it's also the most exciting market in my view. Sure.
The recent lottery in Ontario that awarded 25 licenses to 24 different individuals, which from our perspective is probably 20 bankruptcies and 5 new stores. Right. What in that process do you think is going to be the outcome in terms of new physical locations to buy cannabis in Ontario?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is we certainly understand what the government was doing from the get-go and trying to get privatized retail outlets, and I think, quite frankly, from our point of view, I think it's going to create an interesting opportunity for us to get products out to the consumers. But again, I think it's going to be bumpy for the next little while. We're going to see this this transition from an online system that I think is working but still undersupplied to a group of retail stores that, you know, again, from a management point of view and from you know, the aspects of an actual business, we're not sure how those are going to run.
Sure.
We don't know, you know, yet what that shelf space is going to look like. So I think, and I think I continue to say the same thing, that even that aspect of the business is going to take time and it's going to evolve, because we know darn well we're going to go to, you know, hundreds of retail locations in Ontario, and ultimately competition is going to win out. We are going to see retail stores that people like. We're going to see products in those stores that people like and are attracted to. And ultimately that's what at Newstrike we're banking on. We're banking on the fact that customers are going to want to start having brands that they associate with, and they're going to want to buy it in retail locations that they like. So it's you know, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be frustrating for certain people, and even when you see these municipalities that are opting out now of having cannabis stores in their municipalities, to me, you know, that's not solving an issue that you think you might have. Right. I think, quite frankly, it's a political thing that doesn't make that much sense.
A moral statement, as well.
I guess so, yeah.
As an LP operator, are you confident that the sort of process to allow retail stores fronts, actual physical locations, will eventually be extended to LPs beyond their single store allotment?
I don't know. Again, I think the way they're rolling it out right now is very calculated, and it's not entirely illogical in the thinking of let's try and get others into the industry. Certainly, I think there is some logic in my mind if they're allowing us to have one flagship type store, and we certainly understand the products and we understand the supply chains and whatnot. There's some logic in my view of also having us, even if it's a percentage like it is elsewhere. To me, that's logical. Whether they go that route or not, I don't know. And we certainly continue to work very closely with the provincial governments as it relates to retail. But right now, again, the focus is, in our view, whatever retail environment we are in this country, let's make sure we've got a suite of products that Canadians want to use, and that they can identify with, and that they actually want. Because I think that's the other key thing, is I think a lot of people still don't know what it is they want yet. So we're trying to, we're trying to make things that are attractive to people. And it's in 2019, I think you're going to see a lot of, certainly from us, some really interesting things rolled out that are going to excite a lot of people.
Okay, well that's great, Jay. We're going to leave it there for now. We'll have you back soon.
Thank you very much
for joining me.